I'm doing a last minute video and audio check for all the people out there. I'm switching the cameras myself and doing audio today. I think we're good. All right, how are you?
Hello.
So, welcome back to the show. My name is Zach with Take Detroit, and today we have Brinda Devine in the studio. Say hi to the people.
Hello.
If
How
you
are
ever want
all?
to talk directly to the camera, that's your camera,
Okay,
by the way.
that's my camera. Okay.
So, I reached out to you a few weeks ago after I was online. So, a friend of mine is into real estate, uh, residential real estate, I think single family and multifamily in Delaware. And he came upon a website, I think is Small Changes.
Yep. Small change.
Small Change. And he sent me a couple links. And then I saw the Corner Store project on the Small Change website.
Right.
And then I found you.
Okay.
Small Changes, from my actually, I'll let you explain it. Talk to me about Small Changes and the Corner Store project.
Okay. So small change is essentially an on-site website for crowdfunding for real estate projects, smaller scale projects, disruptors of real estate. So it's smallchange.co.
Closer.
Smallchange.co.
And the Corner Store project, I think there's only a handful of real estate projects from Detroit that are on the site currently, and yours is one of them.
Yes.
The Corner Store project is a piece of real estate in Northwest Goldberg,
Yes.
and you're doing a crowdfunding campaign to get the project fully funded, more or less.
Yes. So Corner Store is KORNR. It's under the concept of corner store, where many of us grew up having corner stores in our neighborhood. And so it's a small scale project in Detroit, historical neighborhood of Northwest Goldberg, 6224 16th Street. And it's a small scale, which means it's difficult to get access to capital. That would be lender financing. So the crowdfunding is an opportunity for another layer of funding, or if it reaches the maximum number, total funding, which would be great. It's another means to access capital for your small scale project or even larger projects. Mine just happens to be a small scale one.
Is that crowdfunding in general or Small Change Co. That gives you another option for funding?
So Small Change Co. gives me another option. I believe Small Change is one of the few, if not the only website that focuses on crowdfunding for real estate.
So, talk to me about the ways real estate financing happens. You just mentioned that crowdfunding is one option, where you get a bunch of people, kind of like political campaigns, right? Like a
No.
politician will get thousands of people to donate $5 to raise, what's that, $5,000?
Yeah.
Versus getting one person to donate $5,000.
Well, Small Change is different. It actually, if you contribute, you're contributing as an investor. So you would be an investor for set terms for your project that you determine that you want. So with that, you would actually be invested in the project, a certain term that you would be paid out. It's similar to a loan. You go and get a bank loan, it has a term, has an interest rate, and then you're paid off, but you're not an investor. Small Change, you're an investor in the project.
So, people, viewers
Yes.
watching this right now, anybody in the world theoretically can go on this website and invest in your real estate project and become an investor.
Yes.
Does that make them an owner, part owner?
That means that they've chosen to invest in my project and they've seen the value in it, and they have determined that the interest rate that they will earn on that as an investor is significant for them, and that at a certain point in time, be it 3 years, 5 years, whatever the terms are, that they will be paid back their investment into the project.
You and I just had a lengthy off-camera conversation about financing a company I'm working on.
Right.
But finance nonetheless. Talk to me about real estate financing and how it happens traditionally, or what that looks like.
Okay, so for commercial real estate, for small scale projects, typically developers fund a lot of the projects out of their own pocket. They will use their own um, credit cards, savings. They will ask their family and friends for money. That's typically for black real estate developers. Also, there are lenders out there, the SBA. We have local banks. The problem is that usually banks and investors tend to focus on the larger projects and not the smaller projects. So the larger projects get more of the attention, the 5 million, 10 million, 20, $100 million projects, but the small scale projects that are about 500,000 less, that would be in neighborhoods that I tend to focus on, those get no attention. I should say very little attention, but I'm going to say no attention.
When you, all right, let me take a step back. How'd you get into real estate? And I want to make the distinction between residential and commercial.
Okay, that's good. So I got into commercial real estate. I was about 27. I was working for a bank that was going under a merger. I was interested in real estate. At that time, you go in the Sunday paper, you look at the paper, you see a job, and you're like, oh, I'm going to apply for that. Out of curiosity, I went to a company, a developer in West Bloomfield Hills, Aquis Realty Advisors. I just went to ask questions and ended up, out of 300 applicants, got the job. I started as an analyst, stayed there 12 years, ended leaving there as a VP of asset management, and loved every bit of it. And there's this distinction between commercial real estate and residential real estate. So most people never even think about commercial real estate. They only think about houses. And I had the same thought until I found out about commercial real estate. Commercial real estate is this building. A commercial real estate is a gas station, a store, an apartment building. That's commercial real estate. It is land. It can even be the air above and the minerals below. So commercial real estate is anything that's around you that you're not living in. You can consider that commercial real estate.
You mentioned a lot of people don't really consider commercial real estate versus residential. I feel like it's been trendy in culture, pop culture, social media, finance recently for people to invest in real estate,
Yeah.
specifically residential. What are some differences, distinctions in investing in residential versus commercial?
Okay, so for residential, if you own a house and you've bought a house and you've got a mortgage on it, you've invested in a residential house. You're paying as your home, but it's also an investment. That's how a lot of people start on real estate. They own their house, they get the equity out of it, they go buy another house or a duplex or a small building, or they use it for equity. The commercial part is, and I just want to say that for real estate, it has to do with finance. And usually we don't talk about finances because many of us weren't raised in a household that talked about finance. So you may not even know, most people aren't even aware that commercial real estate has to do with finance. So if you buy a lot of land and you lease it out, that's commercial real estate, and you earn finances on it. You earn rent on it. If you have an apartment building and you rent out a unit or 4 units, you are in commercial real estate. You are leasing those spaces out, and it's finance. I think we really get left behind only thinking about real estate in just residential aspect and not fully being entrenched in the idea of knowing about what commercial real estate is. Commercial real estate is how you build wealth.
So, while researching for this show and this interview, I read some articles online and I'm going to read a sentence from something I came across. In new research, we test whether commercial real estate is valued differently depending on a black share of population living in an area and compare those dynamics to residential real estate markets. We find that in majority black zip codes, devaluation results in aggregate wealth losses of 235 billion. In conclusion, in real estate, both location and race matters. Basically, the article was saying that real estate is valued differently in black neighborhoods versus non-majority black
Yes.
neighborhoods. What's your experience like in that, and also in financing?
Okay, so I just experienced that for myself. I had a house in the suburbs, and I decided to list it myself. And when I initially did my evaluation of it, I had a set price. When I started getting offers in, they were probably about 50,000 less than what I anticipated they would be. And I came to find out
Was that in a recent market?
that was in 2020. So I'm going to tie that to I actually showed the house. Had I not shown the house, I probably would have gotten more for it. And I actually made the case of moving things out of the house that would signify that a black person lived there. But I shouldn't have shown the house and should have hired somebody to sell the house for me, because it's real. It is real on the sale prices. It is real on the appraisals. So anytime that you are losing money on a house or an investment, that's real money. That's money that you could have invested and earned accruing interest on. So that is essentially leaving money on the table, as if someone just left it there and the wind blew it and the money's gone. So being aware of that is important. That even though you have a project or you have a property, you need to be conscious of the value of it and pay attention to what your property is worth, and in opportunities to improve that value, do so. But yes, it is real. It is a real thing about having real estate and it being black owned and being devalued.
I think that's where, not solely for that reason, but my interest in a website like Small Changes
Yeah.
stems from that. Let's say you can't get financing for whatever reason. Well, if your project is good enough and you have a good story and you actually believe in it, you might be able to get a couple hundred, a couple thousand people to donate or invest a small amount of money and get the financing for your project
Right.
that you might not have gotten elsewhere.
Right.
So I don't really have a direction I'm heading in this conversation right now.
Well, the thing is, they call it capital stack. So when you're looking at a real estate investment, you have a project, you're thinking about how many different ways can I come up with the money to create this capital stack. So key components in the capital stack is going to be your equity that you put in, your financial equity, because your lender's going to want that. Anybody's going to know that you've invested in yourself. You've invested in your own project. And then you're going to look for lender financing. You're going to look for grant money. You're going to look for donations. You're going to look for maybe crowdfunding. It would be great if with the small project you could just go, I'm going to go to the lender, and and I'm going to have my equity put in it, and I won't have any gaps. But that's not always necessarily true, and you have to be creative and look at ways of how you can put together your money with your equity, a lender, a grant funding, sometimes initiatives that come through. You're looking at ways of how you can piece all this together like a quilt to get the capital for your project.
Is there a difference in raising financing for residential versus commercial? Like challenges?
So, are you talking about just for a house, or are you talking about like an apartment building, or are you talking about like
Yes and
multiple
yes.
units?
Sure.
Okay, all right. So housing, so for a residential house, that should be an easy process. Should be. But discrimination, people of color, for women, sometimes it's not an easy process for people. Sometimes it's a process that people have, they don't, they may not have the credit for the house. Or maybe the house is more than they can afford. That's one issue. If you're going for an apartment building, if you're going to buy an apartment building, it would be the same pretty much if I was going to buy a commercial building or a store. That's pretty much the same process. Now, if you're talking about buying a huge portfolio of commercial properties, I've never done that one before, so I can't comment on that one.
I want to reset the room, as they
Okay.
say in Clubhouse.
Okay.
My name is Zach, and today I have Brinda Devine in the studio. And Brenda is crowdfunding a real estate project called the Corner Store, Northwest Goldberg, Detroit. I've actually never been to that neighborhood.
Okay.
Is it Northwest Detroit, or you have to say the whole name, Northwest Goldberg?
So if you've been near Motown Museum, if you've been near Henry Ford Hospital, Northwestern High School, you're in the Northwest Goldberg
I've definitely
area.
been there then.
Okay, so you've been there. So
Isn't that close to like Dexter Linwood area?
yep, Dexter Linwood. Yep.
Uh, so let me take another step back.
Okay.
Talk to me about where you're from, Detroit as you remember it, the changes you've seen over the years, just thoughts about Detroit. So let me talk about myself for a bit.
Okay.
I moved to Detroit 10-ish years ago. It might be a little bit more. And from being from Philly, I remember friends and family saying, "What the hell are you going to Detroit for? What's in Detroit?"
Right.
At the time, Detroit was going through the bankruptcy, and it still had a reputation for $500 houses,
Okay.
or like dollar houses or something like that. I felt there was a lot of momentum in the city
Yeah.
as far as entrepreneurship and just DIY in general. I moved downtown to Woodbridge next to Wayne State when I first moved to Detroit, so kind of downtown, and recently moved over to University District on West Side. I love the West Side. I love University District. I love Livernois. I actually like driving down Dexter.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm just curious to know your just perspective on Detroit, thoughts about it, what you appreciate about it, what people might not know about it, what people don't know about Northwest Goldberg.
I'm going to say that for me, I've always lived in Detroit. I don't physically live in Detroit now, but I've always lived in Detroit. And I've always thought of me being in Detroit and owning part of Detroit, being a resident of Detroit. And I'm going to say I started to see changes probably about 2012 when the market started to recover and there was a push for redevelopment and a lot of new ideas came. I mean, driving through Detroit now, Midtown, downtown Detroit, you would not even imagine that it looks that this is Detroit. It's sort of turned into a place that you would travel to, where before you would go downtown, it would be absolutely nothing, and you're like, this is a downtown, but there's nothing going on. So there's been a lot of dollars, a lot of investment, a lot of planning, a lot of time, and then the neighborhoods, we've got strategic neighborhoods that are being addressed, and then we have other neighborhoods that are just large parcels of land, and you wonder what is this. Sometimes I drive through and I'm wondering, like, what is this going to turn into? Because we have so many opportunities for the vacant land. Because the one thing about land, you can't reproduce it. So you've got so much land, so much vacant land, that there's opportunities to put different ideas on. That's the great thing about land and real estate. If one function doesn't work, you can be creative and come up with another function to it. Northwest Goldberg, where my building is at, where the corner store will be at, I love the neighborhood. I was somewhat familiar with it, but I bought the building because I like the vibe of the neighborhood. I like the just the feeling of being in a neighborhood, of being connected. It's right off of West Grand Boulevard, and I love the community players that are there. And it's a really tight weave neighborhood. And I just they had a festival about 2 weeks ago, and I stayed the whole day. It was absolutely wonderful. The food, the music. Northwest Goldberg is, for me, it is a up and coming neighborhood. So I'm excited about being a resident. I'm excited about the store.
You mentioned something a moment ago that lots of people say. Real estate, they're not making any more land. God isn't making any more land. I have an argument against that.
Okay.
The metaverse,
Yes.
virtual reality, that whole little
Yes.
playground. I'm not super familiar with it, like details.
Okay.
But I know there's platforms like Sandbox and Decentraland. And then I see these headlines every few months where there's a new record set for some buying some virtual plot of land
Right.
for some historical amount of money.
Yeah.
And that is so funny to me because somebody somewhere through ones and zeros, computer programming, made land up in the cloud, and people are buying it. Have you ever, and now I'm going way left, have you ever just thought about that, of like, there's real world, tangible real estate you can touch, a building, a brick, you can touch a brick,
All right.
but people are spending money on virtual bricks, if you will. Like,
Yeah.
again, I'm not going anywhere in my point, but it's kind of amazing. Somebody somewhere is making more land.
Okay. Someone somewhere came up with an idea. Not mad at you. But I look at it like anything I think that somebody can pull the plug and can disappear, I'm not really interested in. So land will never disappear. It is something you can touch. And when you talk about land, it's the surface, it's the air, it's the beneath with the minerals, it's the ground. So you can separate those. And they're tangible and they're real. Meta universe, I've done a little research on it, but I just see it like a timeshare.
Sure.
You kind of own it, but you don't really own it. You're just
Yeah.
renting it.
Yeah.
And until somebody pulls that plug loose and it's no longer there, I'm happy that you came up with it and somebody would buy it. Would I buy any? Nope. Now if it was $1 and I knew it was going to go to 5,000 the next day, maybe. But I'm not interested in doing something like that.
I want to say I'm with you, but other than my home, I'm not, invested in real estate. I'm just curious to see how
Right,
things play
right.
out. Actually, let me switch camera angles, make it wide. What else should we talk about?
We kind of talked a lot earlier.
We did. So, for all 2 people that are going to watch this
Okay.
or watching this right now, I run a company. I'm just going to talk. I don't care.
Okay.
I run a company, Take Detroit. I started that in 2013, and nobody knew anything about it until 2017 when my first viral video hit.
Okay.
Um, Take a step back. Take Detroit as a social media marketing company.
Okay.
We create videos, photos, online content that highlights small businesses in and around the city.
Okay.
I think to date we have roughly 25 million views total on all platforms, maybe a little more. And I've kind of taken a step back since COVID when I had my first child and focused on the studio content. I'm very enthusiastic about building a studio and focusing more on in-studio content. Think different sets, different shows, a variety of things that can be recorded in studio. You and I were talking about kind of my business plan
Right.
and how I'm seeking funding to basically pour gasoline on my little match that I have going right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Uh, Raising funding, putting together a business plan is I don't know if it's complicated to other people, but it's a complicated process, lots of details. You need to know your numbers, and I've been pulling out my theoretical hair over the past week trying to get that together.
Right.
And you and I were, sharing ideas. You were giving me some tips and tricks on how to make my story more digestible
Right.
for people that are not as immersed as I am.
Yep.
And we had a great conversation. Too bad we weren't recording. But if I had a studio, maybe there could have been a camera there recording or something like that. I'm just gonna go. I noticed you had an MBA. Talk to me about business acumen related to real estate, maybe not, of like, you have to know more than nothing in order to develop projects, small or large,
Okay.
to start, the beginning stages of a construction process, to, having a building that somebody lives in, somebody works in, somebody does something in. There's a lot of steps in between there, operationally, logistically, numbers wise. Talk to me about needing to know the numbers, whether it's related to me, you, or anybody doing anything.
Okay. So.
And I'm
numbers-
going off, and we're going to wrap
I
up
know.
shortly.
Numbers are important. So actually, I'm part of a group, Women's Sustainable Development Initiative. We have a focus group with Black women developers, and we have the focus group meets every 2 weeks, and we are engaged in helping them develop their projects.
Closer to the mic.
And we're helping them engage their projects. And one of the hardest things to do is to take your ideas that you have floating all in your head and to streamline them down so that they're digestible for somebody to understand. And so in any project, whether it's a development project, whether it's a business, the first question is, what's the problem? What problem am I solving? And what is my solution?
You mentioned that to me earlier, and in my head, I was thinking, I understand it, and I have an answer to that question, but I never liked that phrasing of it. Like, what's the problem? Like, if I open up a Wendy's, let's say Dave, who opened up Wendy's many years ago, was he solving a problem when you open up Wendy's or a fast food restaurant? I just picked a fast food randomly. Are you always solving a problem when you're establishing a business?
So if you're solving a problem that someone needs solved, then you have customers. So just like Wendy's or Kentucky Fried Chicken, at some point in time, women were going back to work. You needed the food to be cooked. People were hungry. It's like fast food. The problem was the women. Well, that wasn't the problem. That was a plus. But the problem was, well, how are we going to eat? Oh, we need something fast. Well, I'm going to create this model for people to come and get. So the problem was eating. Someone provided a mechanism for them to eat quickly, and that's how it was solved. So it, I know you might not like the
Maybe
way
Wendy's was a bad
it
example.
probably would. So if you could come up with like an idea of what problem, because otherwise, why are you doing something if you're not trying to solve a solution? If
Could
you're
there
not
be a
trying,
need in the market? Could there be a need in the market without there being a problem?
that would be the problem because the market is saying, I want this, but it's not available. So
I'm
that's
not
the
going to
problem.
argue with you.
I
I get
know,
it. I get
I
it.
know. You gotta reverse it. So when you put it, when you put what is the problem, it forces people to think, okay, am I just doing this because I want something to do, or I'm a busybody, or am I actually doing something that someone's going to pay me for? A service they're going to pay me for, a product they're going to pay me for, or is it something or is it just a hobby? Because if it's a hobby, don't expect, you might not expect income unless of course you have such a fantastic hobby, someone sees it and they say, I want to buy it.
Yeah.
But when you're solving someone's problem, like some of the easier problems are housing. People need to have somewhere to live. People need to have their hair cut. People need to have their teeth cleaned. Those are all problems that are there, and people will pay to have them solved.
You were talking a moment ago, and I saved this question. So I operate Take Detroit for the past couple years, and we get a lot of people. I'll post a video about whatever restaurant in the city, and there will be a bunch of comments. A couple years ago, I might have posted something like, "This is black-owned restaurant, a new black-owned restaurant opening on Livernois Avenue of Fashion," for example. And then there will be some comments where somebody will say, why do you feel the need to mention it's black owned? I follow this page to find new cool restaurants around the city. I don't care that it's black owned. I don't care that it's whatever owned. I'm just looking for a good restaurant. You mentioned black woman real estate professionals meeting every so often to exchange ideas. What's the significance, or why make it black woman focus versus just real estate professionals?
Okay, so I've been in commercial real estate 25 years. I've never done a deal with a black woman. I've never done a lease.
Closer.
I've never done a lease with a black woman. I've never had any black women come in and do a deal with, because they're there, but there are not that many of them. And when you add women, you add another dimension to projects. We have skill sets, we have intellect, we have abilities and capabilities, and we have a way of looking at problems and solutions as opposed to just placing a building somewhere and hoping someone comes to it. So we have that focus group because there is not an easy path to development when you are a black woman or a minority or a person of color. And you need to know that what story you have in your experience, you come to find out you're not the only one, that there's multitudes of other people. And so when you get together, you go, how can I solve this problem? And the problem is access to capital. And if one person can crack the nut, it's going to be me.
Yeah.
Then I can share that with the other women to say, hey, this is the lender I went to. This was the process. This is what you need to do to make your project come true, your realization. There's so many people that if you don't, I have a lot of resilience. I'm just built that way. If you are in development and you have a project, you have to be resilient. There's people who want a project, who wanted to do a project, but they couldn't get the financing, and they've been disappointed. They've been hurt, some of them, and they didn't have access to that capital. So the group that I'm in, the person that I am, I don't see me. I have a background in commercial real estate. I have a background in asset management. I'm a rare breed. I didn't even know asset management existed. It's rare to see a black woman in commercial real estate. It's rare to see a black woman in asset management. It's rare to see a black woman in development. And if you want your daughters to see that, because real estate is essentially finance, they have to see it. And so we have women in the group. A lot of them are like in late 20s, 30s. They want this. They want to be developers. And so some people, if you hit your head enough, they're going to stop. They're not going to push forward. But we have this group so we can talk to each other about what's going on, and whatever I'm learning, I'm sharing with them. Whatever, like we've talked and whatever, I'm going to share with them so they can get their project done. They can get the financing. They can develop their project, and they can go on to the next one and the next one and the next one. That's why it's important, because we live. I won't even go that far back. We don't always see ourselves. So when you start seeing yourself, when you start saying it's a black business, you have more confidence, because now it's like I'm not the only one in the room. I've had a career where I've been the only black woman in the room. But if we're all having the same story and somebody breaks through, we can all succeed, because we're going to share that information, and we're going to get more black developers. We're going to get more black women developers. We're going to get more people in the neighborhoods. We're going to get more people in projects. We're going to create more wealth for ourselves. That's why.
Well said.
Okay.
Well said. I have a black realtor, Valencia Page, and her family owns the brokerage Front Page Properties, which, I don't know how rare that is, but
Okay.
I made sure that was my experience. I want to wrap it up.
Okay.
So, the corner store project, 60 seconds. Tell me about it.
Okay. So Corner Store project, KORNR.
I'm sorry, start over.
Okay.
I just put the camera on you.
So my project is Corner Store, KORNR. It is located in the historical neighborhood of Northwest Goldberg. The address is 6224 16th Street. The website is KORNRstore.com. So what this store is about is the Corner Store brand is a model that is an amenity and a neighbor within the neighborhood. So we're going to provide a healthy food options. We're going to have a coffee shop. We're going to have a few items I'm not going to mention because I want it to be a surprise. We're going to have some healthy food. We're going to have a connections with the neighborhood. We've already done and started our community engagement. We're on social media platforms. We're engaged with our community partner, Northwest Goldberg Cares. We are engaged with the different block clubs and individuals in the neighborhood. I love it. The store is about feeling good walking into a store in your neighborhood where I want the neighbors to feel like when they walk into the corner store that this is their store, that they feel like I can come into this store. I want the people outside of the neighborhood to feel like I can come into this store. I have something for you. I want you to feel good about it. I want you to feel like when you walk in, I can do anything. I can. Because I've gone into stores and I'm like, I don't feel comfortable in here because there's really not the connection. I want you to feel good walking in the store. I want you to find something that you want. I want us to be an amenity and a neighbor to the Northwest Goldberg. And that's really what it's about. It's also about proving a point. And the point is having a convenience store in a neighborhood, or having, not a convenience store, but a marketplace in a neighborhood is not a novelty. It is a necessity to have essentials, food, healthy food options, some vegetables. It's important to have those things in your neighborhood. The majority of Detroiters, 80%, good proportion, don't have access to cars, don't have access to grocery stores. There's no reason for that. This is why I never even thought about a corner store, a store. But it's my purpose, it's my passion to have this store. There's no reason we can't have a marketplace in Northwest Goldberg. So I own the building. I'm seeking financing for that store. And that's essentially what it is. It's a marketplace in a neighborhood, just like we had corner stores before. It is not a novelty, it is a necessity. So that is it.
Give me the small changes website where people can invest into the corner store.
Okay, so the small change is small, SMALLCHANGE.co. You can go there and donate and be an investor. You can also donate by going to my website. I have a crowdfunding and donation page. You can donate on small change. You can donate as a GoFundMe page I have. You can also write a check if you want to. I will accept those. So I'm trying to cover all the different ways to provide the financing. Of course, financing. Of course, I put my own money in. Of course, I'm looking for lender financing. But you have to, as I said, you have to be creative when you're doing a project. And I need to look at these other options. Can't just have one plan. You got to have plan B, plan C. So these are all different ways to come up with that financing. But you can go on smallchange.co and you can go on corner store, KORNRSTORE.com. And you can contribute to the crowdfunding page and the donation page.
Brenda, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you.